Blessed be everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I wanted to talk about shadow work, and is shadow work a witchcraft thing? I can answer that question probably really quickly. I don't need to necessarily do a whole video about it, but I'm going to extend it to explain why shadow work's become probably more prevalent in the witchcraft community than perhaps it ever was in the past. But before we do that, I'm Sandra from mysterywitchschool.com, author of Crafting Your Wiccan Path. If you want to know more about Wicca, witchcraft, shadow work, tarot, and blending oils, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss any videos. And if you want to know where to start your shadow work, if you want to learn more about it and how to work with your shadow and align your chakras at the same time, then take a look at my free video. It's called How to Heal Your Shadow Through Balancing Your Energy Centers. The link is in the description field below this video. When it comes to shadow work, I have heard this mentioned a lot in the occult community. I hear a lot of occultists from various different paths, left hand, right hand, in the middle, wherever, talk about shadow work and doing the shadow work and the benefits that they've gained from doing shadow work. And I know that it's not necessarily a traditional witchcraft thing. People back in the day of the cunning folk probably didn't do shadow work, or at least not in the way that we talk about it in modern times. But we live in modern times. We don't live in the past. And when you look at spiritual traditions around the world and you look at the mystical traditions, you will find that what we call shadow work is in those mystical traditions. And even within shamanism, there's an element of shadow work in there too. They don't call it that, but it's part of the know thyself. When we talk about know thyself, that's what we're talking about. Knowing your true, deeper self. Not the ego self that thinks it knows itself, but the true, deeper, higher, true being self. And the know thyself isn't just about knowing what you like, what you don't like, what you believe, what you don't believe, who you relate to, who you don't relate to, what your ideologies are, and what you agree with and what you don't agree with. They're really more ego things, a lot of them. It's more, know thyself is knowing what we are, that we are gods, that we are magical beings, that we are expressions of this all consciousness, and that really the purpose for being here isn't to be suffering in the way that we often suffer and being at the mercy of the 1% elite out there that pull all the strings. It's actually to be able to create a life on earth that is enjoyable and adventurous and gives us a sense of knowing who and what we are. So it's a way of the divine knowing itself. And that's what know thyself is. And that's what shadow work means to me. Back in the days of Carl Jung, the shadow was more of a specific aspect of the self that we didn't like, that had all of those aspects of ourselves that were deemed to be socially inappropriate, that we wouldn't want to own, we wouldn't want to acknowledge that we have within us. So it was associated with things that are very unpleasant and not very nice about humanity. But since Jung, there's been a lot of exploration into consciousness and into why we think the way that we think and how we can change the way that we think about the world, that we can change our life for the better by simply changing our beliefs and changing our perceptions of the world. And so shadow work's kind of expanded out to mean not just the stuff that we're not proud of within ourselves or we want to totally deny we even have within ourselves because it's deemed to be wrong or inappropriate. It's also finding all of the good stuff within ourselves too that we're not allowing ourselves to express because we feel we're inadequate or it's not safe to express it. So that's what I mean by shadow work, is we're looking at the shadows. We're looking within ourselves and shadow just means you can't see it. It's in the shadows, you can't see it, that's all. So you become the owl, and the owl can see in the shadows. So what we do when we're doing our shadow work is, in some ways, we're kind of shape-shifting into the owl, that can see through the shadows and can very silently and swiftly hone in on its prey, which in the case of shadow work is to hone in on our beliefs and our perceptions of the world that maybe are stopping us from truly being able to be ourselves in the world, essentially, in a way that's positive, in a way that is productive. It's also acknowledging those parts of ourselves that we don't particularly like, that we might not be proud of, that we may feel so ashamed of that we don't want to even acknowledge that we have them within ourselves. And part of shadow work is being able to accept those parts of ourselves and to utilize the gifts in those parts of ourselves, because even the darkest parts of ourselves have a gift in them. They have a power in them that we can access in a way that can help and be helpful in a positive way in the world. They don't always have to be this nasty part of ourselves. It can be harnessed to empower us, to make us more, to have more resilience, for example, to stop us from being the sorts of people that people want to use and walk all over. Certainly we can deep dive into our shadow to find the strengths that enable us to stand up to other people, that enable us to say, no, I'm not doing that, enable us to stop somebody from trying to bully us or gaslight us or something like that. So this is the whole positive aspects of working with our shadow. Our shadow helps change our perception of the world. It's magic within itself. It really is deep magical work, the know thyself, and changing those things that aren't working for us, our beliefs that aren't working for us. And the world changes. When we change the way we see the world itself changes. We know from the research into consciousness that so much of what we think is the outside world around us is actually just our perception. And it's not necessarily real. And a lot of mystical traditions, including Hermeticism, which is where the know thyself comes from in the West, teaches us that this isn't real. It's an illusion. It's like a hologram. And so in the magical sense, we're trying to manipulate the hologram to make it more favorable to us and more conducive to happy us. And also, hopefully, for other people as well. Shadow work enables us to feel like we have more of a sense of control over our own lives, that we're not just jellyfish in the ocean. It helps us take responsibility for our emotions and the way that we react to stimulus. And hopefully, it means that when we can choose how we react to stimulus, that empowers us. That means we're not being a slave to our own emotions, our own past traumas. We're not letting them dictate who we are now. And we're able to heal any traumas that we've had in the past, including past lives that may still be coming through into this life. We can heal them through doing the shadow work and take on that responsibility for our own healing and our own maturity. Shadow work gives us maturity. It enables us to be able to step into our adult self and be able to take care of our child self without our child self running the show. There's a lot of child self running the show right now, and you probably see it all the time on social media, where you get all of the conflicts and all the bickering and all the cancel culture and all of the wars that go on through all of the ideologies. You see the child self, the child self that doesn't have the maturity to see outside its own little box and blames everything outside of itself for the way that it feels, because the child doesn't understand that it's responsible for the way it feels. As an adult, we have to take on that responsibility. Even if somebody is trying to hurt us emotionally, even if someone does hurt us emotionally, we still have a choice on how we deal with that, on how we feel with that. You know, how deeply into hurt do we allow ourselves to go? Do we feel the hurt, heal it, and then move on? Or do we feel the hurt and then feel more resentment, hold a grudge and feel really horrible and filled up with toxic resentment instead of being able to heal it, work on it and let it go? They're the choices that we have as adults, and these are the choices we have when we're walking a mystical path of know thyself. You get to know where your triggers are, you get to know where your soft spot is, you get to know where you're vulnerable. And so you learn how to take care of that for yourself as an adult. You learn where your strengths are, and so you learn where you can put those strengths out there to help not just yourself but others in your family, in your community, your friendships, or the greater world. These are the gifts of doing shadow work or know thyself. And in modern day, while there are definitely Wiccan covens that do practice shadow work as second degree, there are many that don't. It wasn't practiced in my coven. It wasn't part of the original witchcraft traditions practicing shadow work necessarily. But it's something that's come in now because we're more aware of it now, where all of the Western occultism and witchcraft and Wicca and this and that have all merged because we as human beings have merged and come together from various different places all over the world. And what happens as human beings come together from different backgrounds is we share things with each other. And as we share things with each other, we learn from each other. And as we learn from each other, we take hopefully all the good stuff and we start to create something new that's an amalgam of all the good stuff. And that's natural progress. That's how things progress. That's how we humans have come to be where we are today. We take things from various different places as we come together, we share them, and we create new things with them. Rather than keeping everything separate and saying, oh no, you can't touch that because that belongs to that group. Oh, you can't touch that because that belongs to that group. That just creates separation, and we never learn from that. When we bring things together, we can grow and adapt, and that's what we see with Western occultism. That's what we see with Western magic and with Western witchcraft as well. It's kind of all things coming in together. Western witchcraft is heavily influenced by Hermeticism, Western Hermeticism, which influences both the right hand and the left hand path in the Western magical traditions. So it's part of Western culture to practice this, and the know thyself is also a part of many cultures that have shamanism as their base as well. Any well-rounded shaman or any powerful shaman is going to know who they are, and they're going to know how to be able to control themselves and take on their responsibility for their own selves. It's a part of all magical, mystical traditions. You really can't walk the magical path with joy unless you do take that deep dive into know thyself. So no, shadow work isn't necessary to be a witch or to practice witchcraft. You don't have to do it. It's not necessarily something that comes with the label witchcraft. It's just something that in modern day we tend to do because it is incredibly, incredibly helpful. So if you do want to do shadow work with me, I have a course called Wheels of Empowerment. You get to do your shadow work working up the chakras. So this gives shadow work a structure because it's hard to know where to start shadow work. I get a lot of people asking me where to start, and I feel that working with the chakras is actually one of the best ways to start shadow work, because at each chakra we're holding different beliefs that are limiting us at that chakra level, and that then blocks what we can do and what we can be at the higher chakra levels. So our whole ability to be able to be the visionary and to see into our future and to even connect to our intuition relies on what we're experiencing in the lower chakras. So when we can deal with the major beliefs and traumas at each chakra level, we can start to get into more balance energetically and step more into who we really are. So if you're interested in that, the Wheels of Empowerment course, the link is in the description field below this video. If you like the video, hit the like button, share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm Sandra from mysterywitchschool.com. Blessed be.